Hello, everyone's Forest Focus. It was only a week or two ago that we spoke about Lyon on their impact on Nottingham Forest, but now we'll do it all again after their shock relegation following a ruling by the French Football Federation this week. Here to tell us what it means and what happens next, it's great to welcome back, so soon after his last visit, the editor-in-chief of Get French Football News, Luke Entwistle. Luke, good to have you with us again. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. Yeah, as you said, not expecting to be on quite as quickly as I was. I think we did discuss the potential relegation very, very briefly in the last episode, but yeah, it felt unthinkable at the time, really, even though it was a looming threat. But yeah, it really hasn't been long. Happy to talk Lyon all over again. And John Textor, which is always a fun topic. Always plenty to say about the man.
Certainly is. Certainly is. We'll get to the relegation, but can you tell us first of all how Lyon got to the relegation? Put some context behind it. It sounds like they've got a lot of debt, and that was a key factor.
Yeah, I mean, the debt has pre-existed this kind of more short-term issue, I suppose, which is the DNC's ruling, which initially came in November, which was a provisional relegation, and then the relegation, which was confirmed then during the DNCG meeting, who are the French football's financial watchdog, on Tuesday. So that's the very short term. It's the DNCG, the watchdog, who analysed Lyon's finances in mid-season, as they always do in November, and then looked at the promises that were made during that mid-season, and they basically check up again. And if the promises made during that meeting in November have not been stuck to, essentially, and the financial situation has not improved, and the club is not stable as is required, it's at that point that they then hand down sanctions. And obviously, this is quite a large sanction. It's not the first sanction that Lyon have had. Back in 2023. He had a transfer window ban, which prevented them from buying players. That was the summer, notably, that they sold off Bradley Barcola and Castello Lucaba, both for quite big fees, and didn't manage to replace them. They had a pretty shocking start to the season. We're in the relegation zone by mid-season before that miraculous rise after a bit of a short-term kind of boost, bolstered by some big signings in January when that transfer ban came to the end. But it predates, it goes back and back. I mean, Aulas is Jean-Michel Aulas, the former president, former owner, who sold the club to Textor back in 2022. He saw Lyon become 7-time champions, but he also presided over a bit of a period of decline towards the end of his reign. He had the stadium moved to the largest site in Decimes, which big stadium. It's one that they own. It's a huge asset, but one that was rather costly as well. They became quite a large company in terms of just absorbing other kind of functions and other institutions like OL Reign, which is the club, female football club over in the US, OL Feminin, which is also a big club which has been siphoned off, the LDLC Arena, which is the basketball club's arena nearby as well. So Lyon became very, very big, and it became very bloated, not just in terms of the football club, but lots of things kind of on the side. Lots of that has since been sold off. There's talk of even selling the academy, which is kind of unheard of when you think about Lyon's academy, the players that they produce. The thought of selling that off that academy feels like would be a misstep if that was to happen. But the debts amounted to around about 450 million euros, that is. Textor, when he came in 2022, accused Aulas of having hidden some of the debt, not being straight with him. So the situation that he inherited was, he knew he was inheriting an indebted club, but one that was more indebted than he first believed. And then he also has a very big part to play in the short term as well, from inheriting an indebted club to spending big on players who have not come off and not introducing a period of austerity, which I think everyone sees now as necessary, regardless of whether or not they go down to Ligue 2. The time of spending 32 million on Moussini Akate, for example, or 10 million or whatever it was going to be on Matt Turner, I think that those kind of deals may be in the past, at least for now, regardless of this appeals process, which has been open. But there's been a larger period of decline, which hasn't been helped by the fact they've dropped out of the Champions League for quite a few years now. Hasn't been helped by the fact that the wider French context, the TV rights money, the Media Pro deal, which was botched, which everyone pulled out, well, which Media Pro pulled out of ultimately, and then the financial crisis that has gripped French football more generally since. That is a wider mitigating circumstance, but Ligue 1 are the only, in Ligue 1, Lyon are the only club that have been relegated. That there are others, Ajaccio in Ligue 2, who've been relegated to because of financial mismanagement. But they're the only Ligue 1 club. So there's clearly an issue with Lyon specifically, despite the fact that everyone's struggling. Lyon is struggling more than most.
There's probably two questions there from that. You've sort of answered one in Turner's case already. So firstly, do you think the relegation will be overturned on appeal? And secondly, even if it is, you said you don't think the Turner deal will go through. Will they move on from Danilo as well? Will they have to?
So will the appeal go through? It's hard to say. I think that there's a couple of positive noises coming out more generally. One, that Textor looks likely to be sidelined. So a bit more on Textor and his management and his management of these DNCG meetings, which are fixed in twice a year into the calendar. This is something that's always been part of French football. You can question the process because maybe it's a little outdated, and given the financial situations of many clubs, you could probably relegate quite a few professional clubs from Ligue 1 based on their financial instability and their current standing. So I think that is something to bear in mind, that the DNCG maybe isn't fully fit for purpose in this age where French football is struggling quite so much because stability, who is stable really, it's a very, very elite group of clubs. One that Lyon would have been part of not too long ago, but no longer. But Textor came in not understanding French football and not really wanting to understand French football. He came in wanting to instead teach French football about how football works elsewhere, essentially. So he comes in and he after the first NCG meeting, this is his first ever one, slapped with the transfer ban. He goes off in this long rant in a press release, ends it with "Welcome to football in France." This isn't my fault kind of thing, which it kind of was. And then each DNCG meeting after is essentially him trying to convince or teach the commission about multi-club ownership and how it works, and how, because Botafogo are doing well, that means that Lyon are doing fine too, and because Palace, who he has shares in, are doing fine, that also feeds into Lyon's success. But the DNCG throughout have said, no, what we're looking for, what we're always looking to see, is just money in Lyon's accounts. We're not bothered about hypotheticals or what's going on in Brazil or the UK or in Belgium with Molenbeek. We want to know what's happening at Lyon. We want Lyon's accounts. And so this has always been a point of contestation, because for Textor, it's been treated more as a lecture for him, saying this is how football should be. Modern football is about multi-club models, and this is how it should be run. So the good thing is that it looks as though he will be sidelined, essentially, for this appeals process. That is a first positive, because he doesn't know how French football works. He doesn't know how French administration works, clearly. So that is a good person to sideline for this appeals process. And Aries, who one of the creditors who helped him buy the club back in 2022, it looks like they'll be playing more of a prominent role, because they obviously fear their assets being devalued quite considerably. So that is a big step and a positive step. That's one of the first positive things that you kind of hear, and that the person who's got them into this mess is going to probably step aside. Someone who's going to be less antagonistic and less wanting to give lectures and more wanting to collaborate and give the DNCG what they want is going to step in instead. And then another thing is kind of support more generally in France. Is reports yesterday, in fact, that PSG, who we talked about, but I briefly mentioned, Barkley moved for 50 million in 2023. There's talk that PSG will give their full fee to Lyon rather than spacing it out across multiple seasons. So they're going to pay all of that Barkley fee, all that remains of that Barkley fee this summer, in order to help their appeals process. So there's support as well. That's going to give a little bit of a boost as well. And then on to Turner. It's difficult to say exactly what's going to happen, because it's an appeals process. It could fail, it could succeed. If it fails, obviously they're not going to spend 10 million on a goalkeeper if they're relegated to Ligue 2. If the appeal succeeds, it could be, and probably will be, with a lower budget than was initially accounted for. So that's something that also has to be factored in, that this transfer window, regardless of success, failure in this appeals process, will look different, you'd have to think, than it would have looked if the DNCG had gone, yeah, that's all fine, go on as you were, essentially, for the 2025-26 season. So I would be surprised if the targets that we've spoken about, Danilo, Turner initially, especially for the fees that were touted, are still targets come, whenever this appeals process is resolved, because it's only today, in fact, that Lyon get the reasons for the failure of that meeting, essentially. So they basically get told on the day, which was Tuesday, yeah, you've been relegated, but they don't get the reasons straight away. They get the reasons today. They'll look at those reasons and then they'll appeal. So it's going to be a bit of a long process, but yeah, I think that their mercato will be quite different from the one that we were speaking about, even just on Monday, if I was to guess.
Just before I ask Luke 2 more questions before we let him go, quick word for the Trent Navigation and for our live show, 25th of July. Get your tickets now. They're only £5. Former Forest players Kelvin Wilson and Lewis McGugan will be on the stage along with podcast regulars. We'll have quizzes, we'll have raffles, we'll raise some money for charity. I promise it'll be a good night, and it should be a warm night, although not as warm as where Luke is now. From what he was telling me down in the south of France, it sounds pretty crazy there, certainly. 2 more questions before I let you go, Luke. The first one, I assume the pitchforks must be out now for Textor amongst Lyon fans. They must want him gone, mustn't they?
Yeah, completely. I mean, they already wanted him gone anyway, to be honest. He did a few things, as I spoke about last time, that earned him a bit of credit. Having digs at Nasser Al-Khelaifi, the PSG president, sharing a few beers by going to a Lyon youth match against local rival Saint-Etienne. Those kind of things endeared him to an extent to the fan base, but the general management of the club has always been a sticking point, and that's the most important thing, I think it's fair to say. By the Monaco match, which I was at in late May, they were booing him. They were unveiling banners of discontent. On Wednesday morning, Lyon woke up to, the city of Lyon woke up to banners everywhere, like really everywhere around the city. So many of them, all of them asking for him to leave, some in harsher terms than others. Textor Out was also on the front of the club store in the centre of the city, scrolled on. So yeah, they very much want him gone at this point. And it seems like maybe some of his creditors too, maybe don't want him gone, but at least want him sidelined. So it's nice that kind of coalesces, that everyone seems to be on the same page to that extent. And I would expect. I wouldn't expect him to leave the club necessarily, but I would expect him to be sidelined considerably, since what each of these DNCG meetings have shown is his incapability to learn, and incapability to run a French club, because he does not know or understand the specificities of that, and nor does he want to understand. And I think it's that ignorance bordering on arrogance that has got them into this mess, really, his inability to learn, and his arrogance in wanting to say that football is different and telling them how football is, rather than listening to the French authorities and saying, no, this is how football is in our country. Football is not the same everywhere. Every single league has its own specifics. Every single league is different. It's cultural differences as well. And you have to respect that. And Textor really from the start has not really wanted to listen to that, and wanted to just say, we've got a multi-club model. This is how it works. And you kind of bow down to us, and you adhere to what we want, essentially, and that's been the issue from the start, really. So the Lyon fans have never fully warmed to him, and this episode, I think, could see him sidelined more definitively.
Just lastly, Forest fans will be interested in this. Probably fans of all clubs, Premier League clubs, will be interested in this. There'll be talk of a fire sale. I'm sure top assets being sold. We spoke about Malik Fofana last time. Will that happen? Can Forest benefit, or will the Sharks be a bit big in the pool, and Forest might still be beaten by other clubs?
This is the most difficult question to answer, I'd say, because we don't know how long the appeal is going to go on for. That's a major kind of issue, and we don't know the sticking points. And Lyon actually, as well, don't fully know the sticking points. They know that they have to have extra cash and etc., but they don't know maybe the deficit that needs to be plugged. How it's going to be plugged. The issue with sales is that obviously if someone buys a Malik Fofana for say 50 million, that 50 million isn't going to arrive in the coffers straight away on the day of the sale, and it's difficult to make a club pay that money straight away. They're always going to want to pay in installments over multiple seasons. That's just kind of how transfers go. I think I'd be a little surprised if I saw a fire sale. I think that what Lyon will probably look to do now is potentially retain their assets until they have an outcome from this appeal. If then it's you're going down to Ligue 2, then there'll be a fire sale, 100%. You won't be able to sell Malik Fofana for, say, 50, 60 million, which is what they were hoping initially. But there's no chance of those kind of sales if they go down. If they get it overturned, I think that they will obviously be looking at the asking price they were initially asking for, essentially. So I really don't see a fire sale during the appeals process because of the uncertainty, and because in the short term for the budget for next year, which is the important part when we're talking about the DNCG, we're talking about next season's budget. You won't necessarily be plugging the deficit that already exists. So there may be different ways to convince the DNCG of the stability of the club on a financial level. But yeah, it very much depends. I don't see a fire sale in the meantime, even though I think a couple of clubs will be circling for a couple of players. Let's put it, Fofana is the big one. Compedi even to an extent, Lucas Perry in goal, George Mikitadze as well. Like there are good players here. And I think that the destabilizing element here is how agents react. If they are looking to get them out of the club, essentially, which is a definite possibility. And if there's unrest within the squad, wanting to get players out of that club as quick as possible, then that could change things slightly. You could then see maybe not a fire sale, but certainly sales happening, sales that Lyon maybe initially didn't want to sanction happening because, well, if there's such a level of discontent in the squad and agents are really trying to force the club's hand, then it's quite hard to react given the current circumstance.
Excellent. We shall leave it there. We shall follow this closely. You can see much more of Luke's work and all the other guys that get French football news. It's mostly, you've got a huge Twitter presence, haven't you? But you're also obviously got a website as well.
Yeah, it's funny. I think GFFN were initially known as a kind of a Twitter kind of account, really, even though it's always been a website as well. But yeah, I mean, big website. We've got partnerships with, say, the likes of News Now and OneFootball, and we have a partnership also with The Guardian. So yeah, we do lots of long read stuff on our site. All of our news is on the site. Everything that's on Twitter is also on our site. So yeah, I'd encourage people to go on that if you are interested in French football. And we've been covering the Lyon story in particular in great depth, and we'll continue to do so as that evolves over the next few weeks as well. So a good place to kind of keep up to date on exactly what is happening in that situation over the coming weeks. And other stories, of course.
Yeah, well, there's loads of Premier League transfer rumours on there if you want to keep up with that. And obviously the Lyon stuff as well, because it does have an impact on Forest, as we were discussing. So yeah, check that out and follow Luke and the guys on social media. If you've enjoyed this, do us a favour, hit like, hit subscribe, do consider membership. You get early access to this if you're at all stuff like this, if you're a member or Patreon, or just a lovely 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. We'll be back either tomorrow with some stuff on Botafogo and those transfers to see if they're still going ahead, maybe with some Textor stuff in that. And if not, we'll catch you on Monday with Darren Fletcher and a couple of the regulars. So do join us for that. But if not, have a good weekend and we shall see you soon.